As I said today, there is a little bit more room in both the operating and capital allowances because of the better than expected recovery. But as I said in the speech, I'm balancing that against the need to keep a lid on debt as well. And so we'll announce all of the details of that next week.
So are you increasing the operating allowance?
Yes, the operating allowance will increase, and so will the capital allowance, but I'm not going to go into the details of that today. Because it's not.
People who are in existing bands, but that sum doesn't go up, so it's cheaper papers.
No, it's not at all. I mean, what most New Zealanders would think when you use that phrase is that someone's pay will stay the same. For teachers, nurses, police, people who have those bands will move through them over the next few years. It's really important. If you look at the public sector pay guidance, as I said during the speech, that there are three categories. One of them is lift for those under 60,000, between 60 and 100 adjust, and between over 100 hold. That is a reflection of the government's view that we need to focus on the lowest income earners. 25% of public servants earn less than $60,000. We have said that's our focus. We now go into negotiations with the various unions and collective agreements, but it is not a pay freeze. People's pay will still be continuing to increase during this period.
So why did you say you wouldn't lift pay within existing bands? Because there's a lot of people in the public sector who feel that's not a very nice thing to do after COVID.
Well, what we're saying is that within all of the decisions we make as a government, we've got to strike a balance. We have taken on a large amount of debt through COVID, and it is important for New Zealand that we manage that and we focus our resources. We're also saying, on the other hand, that within the public sector, we think that there is significant room for us to be able to move for those under 60k. There are possibilities for those between 60 and 100, and we are likely to hold pay for those over $100,000 who represent the top 10% of earners.
So why hold pay?
Servants in that adjust bracket, how many of them will get a pay rise over the next 3 years?
All of that's down to each individual negotiation, and this is another important element of what was announced last week. This is the guidance from the Public Service Commission to chief executives. Those chief executives then do the negotiation, and within that category there is the ability to be able to move depending on the criteria that's listed. So it is really important everybody understands what this is. We've still got pay equity negotiations underway. We've still got the ability for people to be able to move up the bands. So there is possibilities for pay movement. The Public Service Commissioner has outlined his expectations. It now goes into the negotiation.
But there's no.
Did you get the communications wrong around this?
Yeah, look, I don't know. We'll take some time to reflect on that. All I know is what's written on the bit of paper is what I read out to you today, that we've got that concept of lift, adjust and hold, and we've got the ability to be able to move the pay equity settlements forward. We've got those collective bargaining negotiations to go forward from here. So we'll be talking to unions this week, I'm sure, as we make our way through and clarify where we're at.
So is this about saving money or is this about reducing inequality?
Well, it's both. That's the point. That's exactly the point that I just made, that we're in a situation where overall in the economy, we've got to make sure that we're careful with our management. We've taken on a lot of debt. We will continue to see that debt grow over the next few years before we hope to pay it down from the middle of the decade. Just let me finish. But alongside that, we want to reduce inequality. And one of the issues we do have is when we just do percentage pay increases across the board, we actually can see inequality grow in some sectors. So we've outlined the fact that that is a goal for the government, and one of the ways that we can help deal with that is within public sector
So
pay.
you were elected on the PREFU track, and now you look to be effectively banking that $30 billion worth of headroom by reducing debt instead of reducing child poverty or investing in climate change or housing. Why do that? Why not spend that money to achieve your objectives rather than use it to reduce debt?
As I said in the speech, it's a balance, and I've indicated today that there will be some increase in the operating and capital allowances, but we also keep an eye on those levels of debt. I think it's important for me as a responsible Minister of Finance to get that balance right. You can make the judgment next week on whether you think I have.
Could you have been fairer when you announced the public sector pay changes, do you think?
Look, as I say, we'll take some time to reflect on that, but we're going to be talking with unions this week. The material's all out there. It's all available for people to see and read and understand, and I'm sure the chief executives to whom the guidance is directed are clear about it.
How many public servants are below the living wage, or earning below the living wage?
I don't have that number with me today, Tova, sorry.
When you introduced those changes in 2018 to bring public servants in line with the living wage, have you updated that?
So
are they
core,
on the-
core public servants are all on the living wage, but I'm taking your question to mean the wider state sector and also the issue around contractors. So one of the things we have committed to do for contracted workforces is, as those contracts come up, seek to move people to the living wage. So yep, the living wage we continue to work on, and that will continue to be supported.
So you heard today about skill shortages. Surely when you have skill shortages, wages should be the thing that rise to help balance that. Aren't you artificially restricting wage increases when you actually need lots of people who are skilled?
Without wanting to sound like a broken record, there will continue to be pay increases in the
Not related to
public
inflation.
in the public sector. We will continue to go through the bargaining process for that. Public sector wages have lifted significantly faster than private sector wages over recent years as well, and we have had, as you will recall, very significant settlements with the nurses and the teachers in last term, and so we will continue to work with them, but it's all part of a balanced approach, and as I say, you can make your judgment next week on that.
How is the Reserve Bank supposed to get inflation going in the economy when its own government is restricting wage increases?
Well, as I say, I think what we're saying is that we're looking for a period of restraint within public sector pay, but that doesn't mean that there's no increases, and obviously private sector entities will make their own judgments and their own decisions in the environment that we're in.
When you said that the public servants within the other day when you made the announcement within the 60 to 100k pay bracket could receive pay increases in exceptional circumstances, did you mean moving up the bands, or did you mean that some of those bands would increase?
That's up to the negotiations, but it's not ruling out moving the bands increasing themselves.
Do you recognise that you've, given that perhaps your comms could have been clearer, do you recognise that you've maybe caused undue distress to some public servants and people who are on
Look,
the
as I
front line?
say, we'll be meeting and talking with the unions this week. I think, as the chief executives understand that, people will work through the negotiating and bargaining processes.
How are you going
Thousands
to
of people
increase
have
the
written into
size of
those
the...
unions. Thousands of public servants have written into all of their respective unions, a lot of them quite distressed, saying that they're struggling.
As I say, we're going to be meeting with those unions this week. We will continue the dialogue that we have.
you
The
say sorry?
guidance is there.
Will you apologise to those?
As I say, we'll take our time to reflect on what's happened here, but we're very focused on getting alongside those unions, focused on lifting the pay of the lowest income New Zealanders, on reducing inequality. These are important, and these are important issues.
Not ruling out an apology, Minister, for causing undue...
Bernard.
So how are you going to achieve your aims that you mentioned in your speech about wellbeing and child poverty and housing without increasing the size of the public service, and how can you do that when you've just restricted wage increases?
Well, again, we have employed a large number of extra public servants over this period of time to be able to implement the program that we've got. I am repeating myself, there will be wage and pay increases in the public sector. This is about the guidance that's given to chief executives for negotiations. We also have existing agreements that continue to flow through, a number of whom actually, and this is not talking about nurses and teachers, but other parts of the public sector where there are still percentage pay increases to come from agreements that have already been signed.
Was there a connection between this announcement and the fair pay agreements a couple of days later? Because you could argue, this shows the public sector is taking the pain, now the private sector should...
I think I'd argue the connection differently, Bernard, and the connection is that our focus is on lifting the pay of the lowest income New Zealanders and on reducing inequality. The sectors that are most likely to benefit from fair pay agreements are those that are low paid sectors, areas like supermarkets and security guards and bus drivers. Similarly, in our public sector pay, we've focused on the 25% who are earning less than 60,000. So that's the connection I'd make between the two.
Are you saying that the only way to reduce inequality is by holding down the incomes of those at the top?
No, it's not. Obviously, we seek to grow the overall productivity of the economy and lift the value of what we do. What I am pointing out, though, is that when you're in a constrained environment fiscally, as we are, having taken on the debt that we do, that we have to make some choices, and we do have to have areas that we focus on. We are committed as a government to reducing inequality. As I mentioned in the speech, we've seen other downturns where coming out the other end of it, inequality has been exacerbated, and we're determined that that doesn't happen here.
But isn't-
In your speech that you can't fund all of your manifesto promises in one budget, which specific manifesto promises are in for, by the way? So
Yeah, that's next week, and it's not a matter of things falling by the wayside. We make manifestos for 3 years. We don't make manifestos for 1 year. It's a statement of fact that we will focus on particular commitments, but obviously that's all for next
And is there
Thursday.
a cast iron promise that you will achieve all of your manifesto commitments by the end of this term?
That is the goal.
Last couple of questions.
So just on the...
Liam.
You're not going to give us specifics, but is there reason to be excited about something surprising in the budget, a big announcement? Have you got something up
I'm
the sleeve?
always excited about budgets,
I
but
love
that
the
is a
accounts
very
stuff.
relative term to everybody else. Look, as I said in the speech, we're taking a balanced approach here. New Zealand's better than expected economic recovery, which people have worked very hard for, means that we have some more options and more choices. And as I indicated today, I'll take a balanced approach between some lift in the operating and capital allowances, but also seeking to keep a lid on those debt levels.
That's something new on the day?
Well, there's always something new on the day, so I don't want to overhype anything here. You know, there'll be really good tables and charts and graphs that you will love, Liam.
In terms of
Yes, Sarah.
reducing inequality, we've talked about wages, but how much more likely is it that there could be a lift in benefits for those at the lowest end of the income spectrum?
As I said, I'm not going to get into what we are doing next week. What I would point to is the government's record already, in the sense that we had the $25 a week increase. We've indexed benefits to wages, which Andrew Beecroft, among others, said was one of the most significant things that we could do. We've just changed the abatement rates to allow people to keep more of their income while they're on a benefit. So we've made good progress. We've always said that there is more to do and more work to do, but I'm not going to go into the detail today, Sarah.
why can't
Sorry,
you
we'll
just-
let Sarah have one more, Bennett.
The briefing to the incoming Minister on child poverty reduction said that material hardship is going to increase strongly because of COVID-19. $25 benefit increase. NGOs have said that doesn't go far enough. People are still struggling.
As I said, we always recognise that there is more to do here, and the Welfare Expert Advisory Group had a large number of different recommendations. You've seen the child poverty statistics that have come out recently. We've made good progress with around 40,000 people moving around the after housing cost measure. We recognise that within material hardship there is a lot of work to do there as well. So this, as I said, is part of our top three with housing and climate change and child wellbeing, and we'll continue to make progress across the term.
But you could make an immediate improvement right now by just carrying out the $5 billion increase in benefits. You can afford it. Why are you choosing debt repayment over increasing incomes for poor kids?
As I said, it's a balance for us. We have made significant progress in lifting children out of poverty. It's one of our top three priorities alongside housing and climate change. But we will strike a balance in this.